Welcome to Living Well with MS Coffee Break. I'm your host Jeff Alex. We decided to do something a little different in expanding the range of content we produce here at Living Well with MS. Since our community forms the beating heart of overcoming MS, we are commencing this special series called Coffee Break, which features short interviews with members of the OMS community talking about their personal journeys adopting and staying on the OMS 7-step recovery program, the challenges they encountered and how they overcame them, and their tips and tricks for sticking to the path that leads to better health. We hope you enjoy and learn from these brief chats between our regular episodes, and as always, your comments and suggestions are welcome by emailing podcast@overcomingms.org. That's podcast@overcomingms.org. And don't forget, if you enjoy these and other Living Well with MS podcast episodes, please leave a review on Apple Podcasts or your favourite podcast listening platform. So welcome to the OMS Coffee Break, Sarah Thayer. And just to start off, could you tell us a little bit about yourself, your family, your life, where you live, and anything about yourself that you'd like to share with us?
Yes, thanks so much for having me, Jeff. I really appreciate this. This is very kind of you. I live in the Bay Area, the San Francisco Bay Area of California. I am married with 2 children. I have fairly young children, ages 7 and 9. And right now, probably like a whole bunch of people, we are at home together. So we have a lot of together time right now. And we are also homeschooling our children at home. So that is a new and always interesting experience.
And when you were diagnosed with MS, when was that, and how long have you been following the Overcoming MS 7-step program?
You know, I was actually trying to figure this out the other day when I was first introduced to OMS. I was diagnosed about 14 years ago, and it was quite devastating, actually, because I was in the middle of writing my dissertation to finish up my PhD. I was also starting a new job at the same time. I was fairly newly married. It was a whole bunch of things at once. And, I thought I sort of knew what my life was going to be and what it would look like. So to get that diagnosis, at first I was just completely devastated. And I immediately, because of my background, I was trained as a researcher and actually I'm in medical research. And so I immediately dove into the research, and I found all of the research that Swank had done right away. And so within a year of my diagnosis, I was following the Swank diet. In addition to that, I was also looking elsewhere outside of just Western medicine for alternative and complementary therapies. I'm very fortunate to be in the Bay Area where there are so many different modalities of care available, and I immediately found a fantastic acupuncturist, and I've actually been going to that acupuncturist for over a decade now. And I was also looking at other alternative therapies. I immediately found a wonderful naturopathic doctor and, did a whole bunch of blood tests. I figured out that I didn't do so well with things like dairy and some nightshades and gluten. And I immediately took those out of my diet within a year of being diagnosed. So even though at that point I hadn't found OMS, I was following so many things on which OMS is based. Really, especially because of my training, I think I was really looking for evidence-based therapies, and I was trying to follow those as best I could. So I went through my Amazon account the other day to see when I first ordered the OMS book, and it was at the end of 2012. So that, I think, must have been when I found it. And for the most part, I've been following it ever since. Like I said, even prior to that, after being diagnosed, I was largely following many of the things. But what was so nice about OMS is that it just, first of all, George Jelinek, I had so much, faith in him and I think high regard for him because of his scientific and medical background. And I loved the book because it was fully rooted in, the scientific evidence, but it packaged everything together. And I really loved that because I felt like it covered all aspects of every part of my life and introduced me to, a couple of things that I hadn't yet been doing. And I felt like it was just sort of this nice, easy way to be able to control what I could control in an otherwise uncertain disease.
Okay, so and what do you find is your favorite part of the program?
Well, I think because of the work that I had, and the research I had done even prior to finding OMS and was already following the diet part, I was actually the easiest. And we're so fortunate to live here in California where I'm able to have, a vegetable garden outside my door. And we have these wonderful farmers markets with beautiful produce all year round. And one of my favorite things to do is to cook for my family and for myself, the foods that are okay on the OMS protocol. And I love to do that. So that for me was easy. And it's actually really joyful. I really love to see what beautiful, flavorful meals I can put together that both myself and my family can eat.
And what about the most challenging aspect? What have you found hardest to implement?
I think probably the meditation is, it's always, it's a challenge for me. I try to set my day up in a way where I can have early in the morning, I can have a quiet time to meditate. But to be perfectly honest with you, it is a challenge. And there are some days where I just sit there quietly and quite simply, not successful in my meditative practice.
I think that is the most popular answer to that question, to be honest. I think the mindfulness part of it is, it's quite, I think personally, it's quite easy to say, well, this is my diet. And then I know whenever I eat something, what I should eat and what I shouldn't eat. I know if I've done exercise, but sort of mindfulness is very easy to let it slip, to not do it. Some people I know much better than others, but I'd say it's the most common answer to say mindfulness is the hardest one.
Oh, well, it's nice to hear I'm not alone. For me, it's definitely, it's a challenge. When I was first diagnosed, I actually did a mindfulness-based stress reduction 8-week course. And that was so helpful because, I felt like I really did learn how to meditate. And then I knew every week, at least once a week, I would be in a group in one location, and we would be meditating together with a teacher. And that even if throughout the week I wasn't doing so well on my own, I would have that next week to help me get back into it. So that was really helpful. But of course, when you're doing it on your own, I think it's a little bit more challenging.
Okay, this is being recorded in the middle of the coronavirus or COVID-19 pandemic. So with regards to that, how have you had to adapt your daily healthy habits to the new realities with COVID-19 ongoing?
Yes, it's been really interesting. Well, our 2 children are at home full time right now, and both my husband and I are at home too. So you have parents working, children learning, and there's a lot of togetherness. So I don't have that sort of time on my own at all during the day, really, to make sure I'm practicing some of those self-care things. Like I said, I try to do meditation early in the morning before everybody's awake, but some of those scheduling practices have slipped a little bit during this time. So I think that that's a little bit of a challenge. I think what I was worried about at first actually was, our grocery stores, our food stores were just wiped out of certain things. And so I was a little bit worried that I wouldn't be able to, find my flax oil and things like that. Things have stabilized, so that is fine. And fortunately, many of the things that we do eat regularly, lots and lots of fruits and vegetables, our food supply seems to be doing quite well there. So some of my early fears, I think, were unfounded, and that's been good. I actually think that MS has been, I would never call it this, I think, in other situations, but it's been a blessing during this time. And the reason for that is it's such an uncertain disease, and you realize early on that so much is out of, or at least I thought early on, so much was out of my control, that, over the last 14 years, I've had to do a lot of work to accept the fact that things are going to be uncertain in my future, but there's still a lot that I can control, and OMS has certainly helped that. And so I think at this time when the whole world sort of feels uncertain and out of our control, I have a lot of the tools through, just learning to live with this disease and manage this disease to help me deal with that uncertainty. And I'm not saying it's easy, but I actually think that looking around me, I think that it's been easier for me to handle some of the things than some of my friends who have never had health challenges in their lives. And that's, for me, been really interesting to realize, but also to just observe.
Okay, and finally, do you have any tips or tricks for people who are on their OMS journeys?
Well, I think for me, like I said, one of the things I find really joyful with OMS is to find beautiful foods and cook beautiful foods for my family that both myself and my family can eat. And one of the things that has helped me with that is, for the last 10 years, I have a regular schedule for our meals that I put together, usually on Sundays. And I just go through and I do the meal planning to make sure that we have, foods that I know my children will like, and foods that I know my husband will like, and that I will like. And I plan it out for the week. And I find that having that plan makes the daily meal prep so much easier. And it's also, for me at least, it's also something that's really fun. It's sort of like a challenge to put together, a meal plan, especially a dinner plan for the week, that I know that there will be a favorite food for everybody in there, and that it's everything that we can all eat together. I really enjoy that.
Thank you very much, and thank you for joining us on the OMS Coffee Break.
Thank you so much for having me.